Hi, this is Fred Copestake, your host to the Selling Through Partnering Skills podcast. Based on the book, the podcast explores how sales professionals can use the power of partnering intelligence to take their selling to the next level. By combining the skills associated with better partnering and existing best practice, salespeople can ensure their approach is more modern and collaborative. There are 6 elements to PQ, and in each episode we look at how sales professionals have used these and how their insights can contribute to your success. And hello, welcome to this episode where I'm delighted to have Chris Slay, who is the MD of Skills Provision, which is an international recruitment agency which provides professional services worldwide. I'm really interested to talk to Chris today because he's commented recently that when he saw these elements of PQ, they're things that he actually uses to drive his whole business. So, of course, I'm really interested to know exactly how that happens. So, Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Fred.
Perhaps just before we sort of get stuck into thinking about these elements of partner intelligence of PQ, you could just give us a bit of background to yourself and sort of how you've come to do what you are doing now.
Right. I started off in finance many moons ago and worked for a range of British, American and continental banks, ultimately ending up in the city and sitting on a couple of bank boards, where I actually headed up the credit committee in London. Interesting times. I must have been through about 3 or 4 recessions by now, because I'm that old. And you learn from every experience you go through. Eventually, I decided that banking was no longer for me, so I retired at the grand old age of 39 and thought, this is great, but none of my mates were retired, and I ended up incredibly bored. So I ended up building up a food group in the 80s, which was very successful, but then we got caught in the grip of the development of supermarkets, where unless you were very big or very small, you were in no man's land. So at the turn of the century, I decided to get out of that sector, but during it, I needed to employ a lot of people for the businesses, and it worked out that really there's got to be a better way of doing it than dealing with local agencies. So being a bit egotistical, I started our own in-house recruitment business, and from little acorns, mighty oaks do grow. And through a couple of name changes, Skills Provision was actually born in 2005. So even that's been going for 15 years. We had an immense bit of good fortune in 2008-9. when we had gone defensively into an international recruitment position. And of course, that's when the credit crunch hit us, and we were very fortunate that we'd made that decision. I wouldn't claim it was great corporate planning or anything like that, but a fortunate accident. And we have developed the business globally since then. Very recently, we've signed a major deal that enables us to trade in 187 of the world's 195 countries. So I think we can fairly consider ourselves to be global.
I think that's a reasonable claim you can make. I always find it interesting when people say they're international and they've probably been to one country once to do something, and no, you're very much global, I would say, with that. So 7 to go. No, 8 to go. Sorry, maths class. Fred, come on.
Yeah. Of those, I don't see much demand from the Vatican City or Tristan da Cunha. So I think we've probably exhausted the expansion.
You do sound like a guy who likes a challenge, though. So I'm going to watch this space for your first placing in Vatican City.
Yeah, so wait for the smoke to come up.
Different colour smoke. That'd be brilliant. No, so I mean, what a wealth of experience, and this is why I was so keen to speak to you. And like I said, in that you're not just using the partnering skills for selling, which is very much where I'm focusing. It's for sort of how you run the whole business, which clearly will involve an element of sales. So if we can sort of break these down and sort of pick them off one by one, if you like, I'm just sort of like to get your thinking on the first element. The first element I always start with is trust. Trust being the foundation of all relationships, without which it's very difficult to communicate. So thinking about how you run your business, that element of trust, how do you try to build that?
I think a lot of it is innate, Fred. If you're a naturally selfish person who is only interested in what you do and how it can benefit you, you'll find it very hard to build trust with a third party because what's in it for them? You obviously better schooled in all the modern phraseology, as there's no I in team, but there is in win, and all these sorts of expressions. They all have a part to play. But if your natural persona is wanting to try and help people, then I think you're well down the road to building trust. So I would say if you're selfish, you need to rethink whether this approach is for you. I think you're doomed to failure if you are a selfish individual.
You're doomed to failure if you're a selfish individual. I like that. People who've listened to this will know that I try to capture some of the sound bites, and you're already giving me a really decent one there with you're doomed to failure if you're a selfish individual. Which, yeah, I would absolutely agree with it, because the other thing you said is you want to help people. It's back, the classic sales training. We talk about what's in it for me, and that isn't me, the salesperson, it's the customer.
Yeah, just on the difference between building a business and building sales, one must reflect that if you have no sales, you have no business. So, the crunch in building a business is the marketing that leads through to the sales.
Absolutely, and that's why, as I said, I'm very sort of excited talking to you, because I know that the concepts and the things that you're saying will be very applicable. Frontline salesperson, sales leader, business leader. It's PQ, partnering intelligence, is a very, very powerful way of thinking of these key elements.
Yeah.
And certainly, if you think of the sort of the one that you're alluding to, I think with not being selfish, helping people, is this win-win orientation. And so again, I'm interested in
all of the points that you have listed, whether you do them consciously or unconsciously, probably doesn't matter, providing that at some point they go through your mind and they're part of your consideration process. I remember an old guy that's long since dead that I used to have a few beers with on a Sunday morning, and I'll use my best Somerset accent here. He used to say, "Here, my boy, you got two eyes, two ears, and one mouth. Use them in proportion." Now, he used to sell concrete blocks, but I don't really care what he sold. I think it was good advice. I've read it quite a few times since, but where it originated from, I have no idea. But I've tended to use that advice throughout my career.
It is sound advice. I think it has been around forever, but it doesn't make it any less effective. And I personally, I use it regularly. Now sales training 2020, and funnily enough, I'm not even going to try the accent. Talked about the two eyes, because I think that's really important as well. Because it's not just the hearing stuff; it's really reading people and trying to understand them better. So that for me is very much part of the 2-to-1 equation. So, but there's a point on that. You were drinking beer with a guy from Somerset. He wasn't giving you cider.
No, it was beer. Yes.
Oh my word!
He was still sane. He hadn't been drinking the cider.
Well, I mean, that is it's a sage piece of advice. I think that use the 2-to-1 ratio, because then you can really understand people. What are they trying to achieve, and we can adapt ourselves to that.
Well, you will recall from sort of 15, 20 years ago, the birth of networking, and you still see it. And LinkedIn is one of the worst proponents for it, where somebody asks to link to you, and then sort of a nanosecond later, you get a sales pitch from them. And they probably haven't even read or looked at your profile or looked at your website or anything. It's just, I'm desperate for sales. You must need to buy this. And the question that always goes through in my mind for those that hang around and on LinkedIn is, why is this your only means of trying to generate business? Surely there's a big wide world out there, and there are different techniques you can use.
I would agree with you. I think it's a very powerful tool, and I think used well, it can be excellent, and it can warm up conversations. And I think that's the point. It warms up the conversation rather than, there's another victim, if you like, because it's almost that mentality, isn't it?
No, the point I was making, Peter, I'm not denigrating LinkedIn. 685 million people apparently use it, so it's obviously a very popular tool. It's that the users need to use it selectively and at least warm people up before hitting them firmly between the eyes with a sales pitch. Now, some of the worst are SEO experts, which I always find hugely ironic. And that if they are such experts, why on earth do they need to make pitches on places like LinkedIn? That's by the by, Fred. Let's push forward.
We could go right down a rabbit hole here, really, but an interesting one nonetheless. But it's, as you say, let's think about these elements of PQ, and linked, I think, very closely connected very closely to that win-win orientation that we were speaking about, is this concept of being comfortable with interdependence.
Well, my approach to it, Fred, is there's always got to be something in it for the other side. If there isn't, why would they participate?
Absolutely. And I think for me with interdependence, where that speaks to me more is this is more about the collaborative aspect that partnering skills brings to the party. So it's more about emphasis of teamwork. It's more about, we're in more and more complex environments, and so we're going to have to rely on other people to a degree for our success. How do you sort of see that?
Nobody can argue with that, Fred.
And so from the point of view of how you guys operate, how do you find that balance in that, to a degree, it's almost like you're going to have to give a bit of control to other people, and you might sort of feel as though, I'm not really totally in charge of this process.
I would like to think that we are, because our starting point is somewhere different from what I've heard so far from your side. These are buzzwords again, but we like to think back from the future rather than forward from the past. Now, what the hell do I mean by that? What does the world need moving forward? Not what it has experienced in the past. Somewhere in your PQ, you mentioned that those that live in the past will stay in the past. And I agree 100% with that. You always need to be thinking, what does the world actually need in the sphere of XYZ Limited? Now, my orientation is towards recruitment. Now, there are sound bites out there all the time about what is going on. Some of them are obvious, some of them are subtle, but you need to think them all through and then work forward and execute if you feel it is worthwhile. Now, certain things you can identify as mega potential opportunities, but there could be too many hurdles along the way to make it a good investment of your time. To spend too much time on them, you might just want to put a few feelers out, a few fishing lines into the marketplace and see how it goes. Now, if someone bites on one of those fishing lines, then you probably potentially got a partner, but who knows? So you have to be long-term and strategic, I think, in terms of your thinking.
Funnily enough, I mean, we have to, well, it's a linear conversation, but we can jump around in the order of what we're talking about. Very much one of the elements of partnering skills is that future orientation that you're talking about. Yeah, and which also helps with your decision making, I think, rather than always kind of, yes, we've got to look at from the past and learn from it, sorry, but looking, as you say, towards the future, that's where we want to kind of shape our thinking. So again, I scribbled down there, think back from the future rather than forward from the past. I like that. That makes a lot of sense. The other thing I think I picked up there.
That's number 2, is it, Fred?
There's actually quite a few. I'm scribbling lots down here. I'm on my second page of notes, Chris. I can't read them, but I'm on my second page of notes. The other thing I wrote down here and underlined was opportunities, underlined, because again, if I sort of paraphrase and just make sure I've understood what you're saying there, yes, we can get excited about these mega potential opportunities, but we've got to be quite careful to look at them and say, actually, is it really an opportunity? It looks brilliant, but actually, will I get that? So have a bit of a look, but then maybe have to say, you know what, that isn't right. Let me cut my losses. Let's not look at that anymore and waste time, because as exciting as it might be, it's not really something that I'm going to land, to use your fishing analogy.
And to use a footballing analogy, you don't want to be the Martin Peters, where you're 15 years ahead of your time, if the rest of the people playing can't keep up with you.
Oh, you have to explain that a little bit more, because it's the wrong shaped ball for me.
All right. I suppose Gareth Edwards would be the best analogy, where he drove the Lions, but sometimes the Lions, the rest of the players had trouble keeping up with him.
Okay, I understand. Yeah, it's kind of so advanced, so far forward in what they do, what they see, how they think. They always need to slow themselves down a little bit, I guess.
And you can deliver things to the marketplace when the marketplace isn't ready for them. We were first using videos 10 years ago, but we couldn't get any engagement. Now, every man and his dog are using videos, and we're probably using them a bit less now than we were 10 years ago. But another example would be that in one of my other businesses, we developed something called RoboChef, which, as the name suggests, was a robot that would replace people within the hospitality sector. Couldn't get any interest at all when we developed it. Now, the world is suddenly interested.
And RoboChef is still a thing?
RoboChef is still a thing. It's left the UK. It's residing in a university in Australia at present, where there is an operational unit.
Brilliant. RoboChef. That's got a circle around it on my notes just for your info. I'm looking that one up. That's excellent. And again, I mean, if pull these back to the sort of some of the PQ elements, one of the elements is comfort with change. And I guess in some ways we might be saying that some of these, so Gareth Edwards, you talked about sort of your own thinking that this is a way that we can really go. Maybe it's too much of a change for some people at the time. and they struggle. They kind of resist that because it's almost too much. Is that a fair
Well,
thing to say, you think?
yeah, you come across that all the time, and sometimes it's very wise counsel to actually have a resistor within the decision-making environment. Now, it can also be incredibly negative as well if the answer is no, 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 no. If it is no, but we can think about something along these lines, that can be positive. But it can be an absolute turn off if somebody is just a very negative person. And the world has a lot of negative people. Now, to me, they are highly unlikely to become business leaders, and they certainly won't be successful in sales. Don't pay too much attention to them, but don't dismiss them.
So I'm just picturing in my mind. I think quite visually. I'm just picturing in my mind a salesperson talking to a customer. He says, "Perhaps we could do this," and the salesperson goes, "No, I don't think that'll work." It's usually the other way around, isn't it? But equally, what you're saying there is quite interesting, and I quite like the thinking hats model, De Bono's thinking hats, where deliberately you put different color hats on to change the sort of way that you're thinking. And what he encourages with that is to say, actually, at times as a group, particularly if we are all very positive and we're all very yellow hat and we're all, yeah, let's crack on with this and let's do all this, you put on the black hat and go, let's do some devil's advocate thinking. Let's do some what ifs. Let's deliberately try to find why it wouldn't work, because actually that will help us build a better solution anyway.
You should sell that advice to the British government, Fred.
And funnily enough, my wife works for a company that makes part of the products they sell are masks, and they've actually got this pack you can buy with these 6 coloured masks which actually reflect De Bono's model. So I'm going to talk to them about, can I take this and run some training with 6 thinking masks around that? And, yeah, maybe British government could be the first first target. No, really, really interesting. There's some really interesting little thought starts you're giving us here. And so the sort of the last element, if you like, of PQ that we haven't touched on, I'd just like to now, is this concept of self-disclosure and feedback. So good business leaders, sales leaders, good salespeople will be strong in giving feedback to their people, their customers, but equally opening up about themselves a little bit. How do you view that?
Well, at the end of the day, people deal with people. So you can't be a Victorian school mom. You have to lift your skirts and show your ankles on occasions. It's a bit like you, Fred. I know from this conversation that you're a rugby man rather than a footballer. You store that information away because it might be useful into the future. Now, I'm sports crazy. It's the only thing that ever interested me in my childhood, and I'll have a go at any sport at any time. So it makes me quite good at being a conversationalist across a broad range of subjects if it relates to sport. If it comes to things like arts and literature, then I'm bereft. My knowledge base is very poor, even with the mighty god Google available to me. So, you know, if you don't want to talk to people, you certainly don't want to be running businesses. If you don't want to be running businesses, you certainly won't be in sales if you don't want to talk to people. And you have to give people feedback, and it has to be good, and it has to be bad, as the occasion demands. I've always believed that you have to be absolutely exceptional if you're a liar. So it's much easier to tell people the truth, because the truth you're unlikely to forget.
I'm scribbling. You have to be exceptional to be a liar. Again, it's a lovely little soundbite, because what you then explained around that is it's just easier to be honest, more authentic, and actually that's what's going to drive the relationships. So why even make your life hard? Is kind of what I've heard there. Nice. Yeah, that's really cool. I also made a note that when I'm putting together my PQ quiz team, that you're the sports specialist, but not to look for you when the arts and literature or the science questions come up potentially.
Absolutely. I'm good at food as well.
Food and drink. Okay, I'm now
Oh,
picturing.
you've got
I'm now
it. Well
picturing
done, Fred.
I'm now picturing the the little Trivial Pursuit type thing, putting the
Yeah.
Jesus in. Oh yeah, green, no, but the brown, no, but yeah, let's go for sports, Chris. Oh
Doesn't
dear.
it go back to yet another one of those sort of hackneyed expressions? You know, work hard, play hard. I haven't got time to waste my life on lost causes. So if something isn't working, face up to the reality and either abandon it or pigeonhole it. The Martin Peters story, the RoboChef story. Some
Yeah,
of
yeah,
these things will come round, and the future will get closer to you. I'm sure there's many people out there. Well, I know that there are, the huge tech firms that probably have the next 5 iterations of the iPhone lined up already. They will leak them into the market when the market is deemed by them to be ready for them.
yeah. Yeah, they're always ahead of themselves, aren't they? And not going to be taken by. Well, they have more control over
I
that.
think if you're driving a business or driving sales, you have to be prepared to think outside of the box.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. The future will get closer to you. So, oh, look, there's some really interesting food for thought in this, Chris. It's excellent. You sort of, I'm going to reflect on this definitely. And I guess while we're thinking about the future, and as I sort of draw this to the end, because time's rocketed on. You've talked about you've just signed up, or you just made this partnership that is making you truly global. So I guess for you, is that a future thing, or is that a culmination of past work? Well, what I'm kind of asking is, what's next for you? Where are you going from here?
Well, it is a major move from our point of view. You can divorce international recruitment from international staff support. We've always had the international recruitment. We've never had the international support. So we could find somebody to work in a country in Middle Africa, but if a client says, we haven't got a subsidiary there, but we need to get these 3 people in mega quick, what can you do to help? Well, we have had some interim solutions, but never a complete solution. So we've been looking for a link with a major name that can do this. And we've been lucky enough to strike a deal with Globalization Partners. They're not the only entity that offers such solutions, but in our opinion, they're the most professional player out there. So that will be a central part of our activity, certainly for the next 12 months. But we also have other plans to exploit things that have come about because of COVID-19. Here's another one for you to get your pen ready for, Fred. Out of chaos comes opportunity, and COVID-19, we have developed some new product streams because of it. One that is not unique, but has certainly been given a hell of a fillip by COVID-19 is remote working. And we have been working remotely ourselves since 2005, more because I can't be asked to go into the office or anything like that. So we've made people come to us, Now, it's been a real game changer. And we're now finding people saying, well, can you help us find people to work remotely for us, usually in something like IT? But I think that will increase. And you might even find that things like assembling, knitting and things like that, where people have always wanted to get people under the same roof, they might actually return to how it was done 150 years ago, when it used to be sent around the houses for completion. Who knows? But open your mind to the thought processes. Yeah. And the other one, which is new and it's come as a surprise to us. It certainly wasn't something that we had foreseen with COVID-19, but with restricted travel and visas, there's suddenly a demand for what we have dubbed local locals. By that we mean that if somebody wants a high-vac engineer in Saudi Arabia, where they probably just sort of contact some spotty recruiter such as skills provision and say, can you send us a couple? Now they can't, and we've actually been doing some recruitment in Saudi Arabia, for example, for things like nurses and things like that, where we actually have to find either a Saudi national with the right qualifications or an existing international person already in Saudi Arabia with the right visas in place. Now, if you'd said to me that would become a new product line 6 months ago, I'd probably said nonsense. But whoever foresaw COVID-19? I didn't.
No, absolutely not. And again, it's that agility, it's that way of being able to respond to stuff. So I'd not thought about that remote working, and people are going to put this forward as being a very modern approach. And you're going to say, yeah, well, it's 150 years old or so. It's what we used to do, where I'll sew the buttons on, you then sew the sleeves on. And then certainly, yeah, locals, and I know a bit about working in Saudi. With the whole concept of Saudiization will probably be an opportunity as well. But lots of interesting stuff going on, and like I said, lots of food for thought that you've been very generous sharing with us, and sort of giving me certainly some areas to think about and reflect on. How can we get in touch with you? That's an important thing. There might be people listening here that want to have a talk about remote working, or need locals, if you like.
Well, we've got many businesses out there on the internet. It's not just skills provision, but the mother company, the big one, is called www.skills-provision.com, and there's contact forms on there. Just fill those in. It will take you no more than a minute to fill it in. It will probably trigger an autoresponder, but it will then lead to some human interaction, because at the end of the day, I seem to recall saying people talk to people.
Yeah, so it's a wonderful conceptual conversation we have, but fill it in and you get an autoresponder to get you to talk to the right person, is what I think you're saying. And people buy from people. People need to talk to people.
Yeah, and obviously anyone who's engaging needs to know what they want. And if an employer has not gone through some of the thinking processes that we've been discussing today, Fred, in a micro or a macro sense, then are they actually in a position to go ahead with recruitment? The failure rate from initial inquiry to conclusion is huge. Before COVID-19, it was running at about 86%. So only 1 in about 6 inquiries actually went anywhere.
Wow. So www.skills-provision.com. We can pop that. We can pop that in the show notes. We'll put that with the stuff that goes out with this. But Chris, look, thank you so much for just spending a bit of time on sharing some of your thoughts. Very valuable. And I'm certainly going to keep my eye open for Robo Chef. I've got a little thing in my heart now for Robo Chef. I want to see how he gets on.
All right then, Fred. Nice to speak to you.
Yeah,
Goodbye.
thanks so much, Chris. Cheers. Thank you for listening to the Selling Through Partnering Skills podcast with me, Fred Copestake. If you liked it, why not leave a review? If you didn't, also leave one. Remember, it's all about the feedback. If you want to learn more about your own PQ, why not go to the book website, which is www.throughpartnering.co.uk, and there you can take a little self-audit. And of course, if you want to get in touch to talk about how you can use partnering skills, you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So until next time, keep thinking about how you can adopt a more modern and collaborative approach to selling by selling through partnering skills.